Imagine waking before the sun in a bedroll stiff with frost, with nothing waiting for you but a fire that hasn't been lit yet. No breakfast table, no pantry worth speaking of, just a sack of flour, a few potatoes, a slab of salt pork going soft at the edges, and however many miles of empty land stood between you and the next town. The Great Depression had reached even the open ranges. Cattle prices had collapsed, work was harder to find, and many ranch hands were grateful for any meal that could be stretched one more day. This wasn't a life built around meals. Food happened in the gaps, in whatever 10 minutes could be spared before the horses needed tending again, and it rarely made it into the stories people tell about cowboys. It was just what happened, quietly around a low fire, night after night, in country that didn't care whether you'd eaten or not. Some of what they ate came from rattlesnakes and prairie dogs, and one stew used parts of an animal most modern kitchens would throw away. During the worst years of the Depression, wasting food simply wasn't an option. Cornbread and beans soaked overnight in a battered pot, then set low over coals for hours, sometimes half a day, until the water had gone thick and dark. The cornbread came together fast. Meal, water, a little grease, poured into a skillet already hot from the fire. It was cheap and it kept. A single sack of dried beans could stretch through hard weeks if a man was careful. And during the Depression, careful was often the only way anyone got by. It was eaten straight from the pot most nights, no plate needed, and nobody minded a burnt edge on the cornbread. Complaining about food was a habit men left behind early. After a while, a man stopped asking what he felt like eating. The question became what was still available. Fried salt pork. The pork came packed in barrels, cured hard with salt until it could survive weeks without spoiling in the heat. Sliced thin and dropped into a pan, it hissed and curled as the fat rendered out, filling the air with something sharp and smoky that clung to a man's clothes for days. It didn't need a fire that lasted long or much watching, and on nights after a day in the saddle, that mattered more than taste. The grease left behind rarely went to waste. It went into whatever was cooked next. Nobody asked what it tasted like. It filled the stomach, and that was ambitious enough during the worst years of the Depression. Son of a bitch stew. When a calf was slaughtered, almost nothing went to waste. Heart, liver, sweetbreads, marrow gut. The parts a modern kitchen would discard went into one pot together and simmered for hours. The organ meat breaking down into something thick and dark. The smell heavy enough to keep men at a distance until it was ready. The name alone told people how they felt about it. It wasn't made often and never lightly. It used up what would otherwise rot on an outfit where rot meant a loss nobody could afford. Men ate it in silence mostly, and sometimes it was the only meat they'd see in a week. Depression-era biscuits. Flour was still cheap, and that mattered. A few handfuls mixed with water, lard, and whatever leavening could be found became biscuits that filled a hungry stomach better than almost anything else. Not every ranch kept a sourdough starter, but many cooks guarded one carefully, since it meant bread could still be made when town was far away. Baked in a Dutch oven among the coals, they came out browned on top and soft inside, eaten almost as quickly as they cooled. Some meals had little more than biscuits and coffee, and on hard years that was enough. Cowboy coffee. Grounds thrown loose into a pot of boiling water. No filter, no measuring, sometimes boiled 2 or 3 times before a fresh handful was allowed. It came out bitter and gritty, strong enough to keep a man upright through a 4 a.m. watch. Coffee wasn't really a comfort. It was a tool, something to keep hands moving and eyes open when the cold and the dark made a man's body want to quit on him. Dried beef and leftover meat. Fresh meat wasn't always available, even on ranches, and nothing edible was wasted. Leftover beef was salted, dried, or smoked whenever possible, stretching one animal across far more meals than anyone preferred, carried in a pocket or saddlebag, and eaten on the move. It wasn't a delicacy. It was a way of making sure tomorrow's meal existed before today's had even ended. For some cowboys, that meal came from a source few people would willingly consider: prairie dog and jackrabbit. When supplies ran short, whatever moved across the range became a possibility. Jackrabbit was the more common prize, though prairie dog occasionally found its way into the pot too. The meat was lean, sometimes tough, sometimes barely worth the effort of the hunt. But effort wasn't really the question. Hunger was. It was hunted alone usually, by whoever had a rifle free and a few spare minutes before dusk. Nobody talked much about how it tasted. Some things a man ate without letting himself think too hard about it. Fried rattlesnake. Not every man would touch it, but in particularly hard times, a rattlesnake killed on the trail sometimes ended up skinned, cut into pieces, and dropped straight into hot grease. It curled tight in the pan, the meat coming away pale and stringy from the thin bones underneath. It cost nothing but a bullet or a quick blow with a shovel, and in country where almost nothing else offered itself up for free, that counted for something. Most ranch hands never ate it at all, but for some men in the hardest years, unusual meals stopped seeming unusual. Fried potatoes. Potatoes appeared on depression tables everywhere, including ranch kitchens. Cheap, filling, and able to sit for weeks without going bad. Sliced into a skillet with a little grease, they browned at the edges while staying soft in the middle, stretching a meal that otherwise would have felt too small. Many mornings started with little more than coffee and fried potatoes. Nobody expected variety anymore. They expected enough. Canned tomatoes. A tin of tomatoes was one of the rare things a cowhand might look forward to. Sweet, acidic, wet in a way almost nothing else in his diet was. Opened with a knife and eaten cold straight from the can, the juice drunk last so nothing was wasted. It broke the monotony of beans, bread, and potatoes for a moment. Some men saved the can afterward, for water or nails or whatever the next stretch of labor might require. Gravy made from flour and grease. When meat ran out but the grease hadn't, flour was stirred straight into the drippings, thinned with water or milk if any was left, until it thickened into something dark and heavy. Poured over biscuits or potatoes, it turned almost nothing into something that at least felt like a meal. It required no extra ingredients and no trip to town, just what was already in the pan, stretched as far as it would go. This wasn't a recipe anyone taught. It was what a man did when he had flour, grease, and not much else. Whatever was left in the pot. By the end of a long stretch of work, meals stopped being distinct from one another. Beans from 3 nights ago, a scrap of salt pork, the last of the gravy, all of it went into the same pot, reheated over the same low fire, eaten without much thought given to what it had once been. There was no waste to spare. Whatever remained got eaten, cold mornings and all, until the pot was empty and something new had to be found. By then, most men weren't cooking to enjoy anything. They were cooking because the body demanded it. This wasn't choice, it was survival. Looking back, it's easy to focus on the unusual meals. The rattlesnake, the prairie dog, the organ meat stew, because those are the ones people remember. But they weren't what most cowboys ate most often. The real story was simpler. Beans, biscuits, coffee, potatoes, and preserved meat stretched across as many days as possible. The extraordinary foods appeared when circumstances turned desperate. The ordinary ones carried people through the rest of the year, and in many ways they tell the larger story. Not one of adventure, but of endurance. For most working cowboys, survival meant getting up before dawn after a poor night's sleep, saving bacon grease because buying more wasn't guaranteed, and making biscuits from the last flour in the sack while hoping wages arrived before the next sack was needed. It meant finishing every scrap on the plate, because throwing food away wasn't something a person did when the future felt uncertain. The hardest years rarely announce themselves while they're happening. They arrive one stretched meal, one repaired boot, one postponed purchase at a time.